Great, so good morning and welcome to Stronger Together, our collaborative festival of co-production learning. And I'm Vicky O'Donoghue, for those of you that don't know me and haven't been to the webinar programme that we launched last month. I am the co-production project lead on behalf of all the National Ageing Better partners from across the network. And I've been helping and supporting everyone to come together to place all their co-production learning from across 6 years in one place. So we've been working that out together in true co-production style over the last 15 months. And in this session today, we have some of those Ageing Better partners on the panel, and we also have Sophy, Proctor from the National Lottery Community Fund. And I'm going to hand you over in a second to South Yorkshire Housing Association CEO Tony Stacey. South Yorkshire Housing Association are the lead organisation for this project and for the Age Better in Sheffield programme. And during the session today, we'll be outlining the festival for you, telling you a little bit about what's in store and what we've got planned. And then we'll be opening up the floor to find out a little bit from you about your own co-production journeys and where you are on that journey and what you'd like to get out of this festival. And the partners will tell you a little bit about what they're bringing to the festival and what they're bringing to our national toolkit, which we'll also tell you about in a moment. And then the second part of the session, we will have a Q&A, which will be much more interactive, where we can open up to the panel and invite questions from the audience. So thank you all very much for being here at our launch session this morning. I'm going to hand you over to Tony now, who's going to virtually cut the festival ribbon for us and just say a few words. So thank you, Tony.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Stronger Together, a festival of co-production learning with Ageing Better. A couple of minutes ago, I was scurrying around looking for a ribbon and a pair of scissors. Well, I managed to get the scissors, but the best thing I can come up with as a ribbon is my grandfather's civil service medal. But I think cutting that probably is not going to get us very fast. So I'm going to pass on that one. You're very welcome, all of you. Over the next 3 weeks, the festival is going to provide an unbelievable 53 events. I still can't believe that you guys have managed to put on 53 events. It's quite incredible. Each one's going to be an opportunity to celebrate what you've all achieved, we've all achieved over the last 7 years, learn from each other and think through what some of the lasting legacy of the 14 hubs for Ageing Better around the country will provide for us. The festival includes sessions such as, is co-production intrinsically creative? Well, I think we can probably answer that one now, but the ability to explore that together is really exciting. Anti-ageism activism, how can co-production be integrated with the public sector? It's a really good varied range of programs. And of course, we've got the launch of the National Online Co-Production Toolkit, and that's just in the first of the 3 weeks. The festival brings together commissioners, Ageing Better teams, volunteers, stakeholders, and people who are just interested in different and better ways of collaborating with each other. It's over 2 years ago now that we held the national conference, which was hosted in Sheffield. And what struck me then was the way in which everyone engaged from the get-go. There were no co-production royalty, aristocracy there. Everybody just brought themselves, got stuck in. And I think for me, what strikes me about the people who are involved on this journey is that we all realize none of us can ever be experts. There's never going to be a point when we just sit back, congratulate ourselves and feel that we've cracked it. This is about a process, the development of a culture of learning, and above all else, enjoying ourselves along the way. So I'm sure that that spirit will be there throughout the 3 weeks, and very much looking forward to the discussions over the next hour or so. And I'll pass you back to Vicky.
Thanks so much, Tony, for that lovely welcome. And I'm going to just share a few slides now and just take you through what we've got planned. So bear with me one moment. Okay. So, a meeting of minds, how co-production benefits people, professionals and organisations. That is what this festival is all about. And part of our national toolkit will actually house lots of different ways that you can tap into the different types of co-production that's happened across the network. But there's also a lovely report called A Meeting of Minds from the National Lottery Community Fund, which showcases not just the co-production of the Ageing Better programme, but other programmes that are using this approach that the National Lottery have funded. And this will be available in the toolkit, but Imogen is going to share a link with you as well in the chat, so you can get access to that lovely sort of overview, which is what we've kind of taken some of the quotes from today to define, well, what is co-production? It's a word that's branded around, it's used all the time. There's a lot of jargon around co-production, I'm sure that we all agree. So yeah, how do we humanize that? How do we actually translate that and make it actually meaningful? I did lots of work with various members of the different Ageing Better programs at the beginning of this project. We did workshops and sessions where we really kind of pulled that apart and got into the heart and soul of co-production and what that actually meant to people that are at the heart and soul of the work of the Ageing Better programme across the network. And these are some of the sort of common definitions that you will find around sort of really trying to translate what we mean by co-production. So it is about co-creating services and involving service recipients in different stages of the process. And that means the planning, the design, the delivery, the auditing. It also means the evaluation. It also means the governance as well of a programme, project or activity. So co-production very much isn't just a word, it's not just a concept, it is a meeting of minds coming together to find a shared solution. And you know, we are all about sharing the voices of the people that have been involved in that across this festival. I'm sure many of you will have seen the ladder of participation before, Einstein's ladder, not to be confused with Einstein. And this is really what we mean by moving up the ladder, moving away from doing to and trying to fix people, moving up the ladder and moving away from doing for and just engaging and involving people at consultation level, and really getting to the top of that ladder where we're doing with in an equal and reciprocal way. So people are sharing power and working together to co-produce, co-create and co-design. And some of the words that we've picked out here are some of the principles that we feature in our national toolkit, and has come from the Ageing Better programmes themselves, what co-production means to them: collaboration, respect, empowerment, diversity, involvement. That's just the tip of the iceberg, really. So what to look out for across the festival? Well, these are the key themes. This is just week one. So we're going to be very much exploring creating a co-production culture together, looking in depth at Ageing Better's own co-production model. And then we have various partners coming to run workshops around changing a place through co-production, through community development, identifying what needs to happen in coastal and rural areas, social prescribing through co-production, the impact of co-commissioning, as Tony mentioned earlier, tackling ageism through co-production, and those sessions around integrating co-production within the public and community sectors. It is also very much the launch of our national toolkit, and that in itself has been an incredible piece of work. We've had 65 people across the network involved in this, producing, developing, sharing content, tools, how-to guides, stories, videos, podcasts, the list goes on. And we will be showing people that for the very, very first time this morning. The first session sold out, the second session sold out, but we've still got a few places left later on in the week, and there are plenty of places left further on in the festival if you still want to get on to one of those sessions. And we also want to bring a bit of a festival vibe and a festival spirit to the whole event as well. So we have got some extra curriculum stuff in the pipeline for you as well that we'll be sharing at various points. And we'll be sharing links to people who are actually signed up to sessions across the festival. We've got some dance sessions with our lovely Charlie, who has been doing some phenomenal work with Age Better in Sheffield that you can join in with. We've got a network and natter session on Thursday. We really do sort of invite you to come along to that if you can, so you can meet fellow participants, meet the people involved, and really look at how we might be able to support and further share information with you. We've got an absolutely fantastic event on Friday called Gather Town. It's a virtual environment that you can meet people in, almost like being in a room with people, and there's lots of different access points where you can interact, have conversations, give your feedback, give your thoughts. So again, I would really, really recommend joining us in that session if you can. And then we've got our celebration on Friday, where again we'll bring a festival feel and we'll do some lovely reflections around the week and celebrate the first week of the festival. So if you can come along to that last session on Friday, please do so. So I'm going to hand you over to our panel now, who are just going to briefly introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they're bringing to the festival. So we'll start with Sophy Proctor, actually from the National Lottery Community Fund, who'll just share perspectives from the National Lottery, and then we'll move forward into the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Great timing as my battery just died as you were just about to introduce me. So sorry if I scrabbled around a little bit there. I am really happy to be here. Aging Better is really close to my heart. And now in my new position, I'm fortunate enough to be able to see how co-production has flourished across all our strategic programmes. But it's particularly interesting on Aging Better, where we've seen a participant group of people who are lonely and socially isolated, able to be meaningfully involved in the co-design, co-delivery, and indeed the co-production of the programme, as Vicky said, and Tony has referred to, across the 14 partnerships. And what that has done as a funder, it has given us some invaluable learning on what our key principle of putting people in the lead actually means. Because I think, as you may or may not know, as a funder, we have some jargon involved in applying for our funding, highly unusual. And people in the lead is something that we've started saying a lot without actually thinking about, well, what does it actually mean? And I think what this festival is going to show us, and what we've learned, is what it does mean. It means giving people a voice. It avoids being done to. And it shows through the application of co-production that there is no one right way. And as funders, again, as large funders, we often struggle with that. Is that, well, what boxes can we tick to show that co-production exists? Well, we can't, because it depends on the context, it depends on the connections, it depends on the people who are involved. And that's what true co-production is. So, as I've said, I'm really, really happy to see this being celebrated in such an incredible way with 53, I think you said, different events. Absolutely incredible. So we've taken those core principles from Aging Better and we've tried to learn from them as a wider fund. And what we have learned is that going forward, we need to look a lot more at meaningful involvement. And this could be things like microgrants, for example. It could be things like participatory grant making. It could be the way in which participants are connected and involved in the delivery of the programme. So again, these are all elements that we've learned from the Aging Better programme, particularly from co-production and this element, this strong element that's going to come through today. And another thing we've learned, which I can see reflected in the learning of Aging Better, is that you need to give organisations opportunity, time and space to develop the conditions that are needed for this to flourish. There is no point in planting seeds on a concrete road. Nothing is going to happen. So this is a really important bit of learning for us. And while we're aware that this can't happen right across every single funding programme, we can make sure that co-production occurs in a different way. And that takes me back to what I've said previously, that there is no one right way, and we need to accept that, and we need to integrate it into how we assess our funding and how we manage our grants. And finally, going forward, we're aware that we operate in a wider ecosystem, and as funders we can influence and we can share our learning, and more importantly we can work in partnership with other systems to make sure that this is embedded there. And that's why I'm so pleased that South Yorkshire Housing Association have taken such an active role in all the elements of co-production and really promoting it across not just the programme but far more widely, because the involvement of housing we see as absolutely key in a meaningful legacy to this programme. So I'm going to end now and let the rest of the panel give you their far more informed opinions about co-production. But just to finish with the final reflection, that we will never crack it. And that's a good thing for me. That's a wonderful thing, because that means people will always be pushing themselves further and further and further to find out what works for them, what works for their community, and what works for the particular element that they are trying to explore with the work that we're funding. So thank you very much for inviting me on this panel. I'm looking forward to listening to everyone else's reflections, and I'll close there.
Thanks so much, Sophie. That's fantastic. So I'm going to hand you over to John first of all. Then, John, if you would just like to introduce yourself and just tell us what to expect from Greater Manchester.
Thanks, Vicky, and thanks for the introduction as well, Sophie. It's I'm not sure I've got far more informed opinions. I do have far more opinions, but we'll see how we go with those. So Ambition for Ageing mainly focused on how we improve social connections within places. We worked in 24 neighbourhoods from the centre of Manchester to the rural fringe of Oldham. And in those neighbourhoods, we funded nearly 1,500 projects, pumping over £2 million into very small community projects, supported by a fantastic range of community leadership organisations providing wraparound support to communities. And through that process, it's a wide and diverse programme focused on inequalities and the barriers that people from low income and marginalised communities find in place. But we found some really common patterns to approaches and how you understand communities and how you tailor work to them. And so we developed some really practical tools to help you understand a place and the barriers that may exist in a place. And in our session, which I think is tomorrow, we've got a couple of members of our team, Lucy and Kirsty, plus also Steve, who's really active in our older people's network, but started off as a volunteer in the Bolton area, and showing the kind of conditions that are needed to get microfunding right. In order to co-produce projects that really change the nature of a place and make social connection much more easy.
Great, thank you so much, John. Can I come over to you, Chris, now?
Yeah, good morning, everybody from Bright Life, Cheshire. I think what we knew in Ageing Better and in Bright Life, we're a fixed term project. Our raison d'etre was to test and learn new ideas, new projects, new philosophies, new principles. We wanted to do the right thing for older people in the here and now, but we always knew it's what we left behind that would ultimately be the evidence of whether we've achieved anything really. And so we've been really pleased. We've been developing our local legacy website, but the opportunity to contribute to a far-reaching national toolkit and resource is a great opportunity and not one to be missed really. And particularly given its applicability is beyond older people, beyond social isolation. It's any kind of activity that people want to get involved in really. So in approaching this, we've brought a few things. One, Dale Maskell is the Chief Executive of Age UK Cheshire. Our lead body is going to be at the workshop this afternoon on co-production models, talking about how it's impacted upon them as a charity and how he's trying to inculcate co-production into the strategic development of the charity. Tomorrow, Christine, our social prescribing manager, is going to lead a workshop around co-production in social prescribing, with personal input from practicing social prescribers. Our model sort of predated the NHS link workers, and we've developed into a truly community-based and person-centred model that we're trying to impact upon all the other organisations now getting involved and looking at how our work complements theirs. We'll also have some input in that session from our buddying and befriending project, and looking at how those two sorts of practice can work together and help people to get more sustainable, lasting sort of independence and confidence socially. Then on Thursday, I'm going to be leading a session on co-production and commissioning. We'll again have personal observations from some of our volunteer commissioners. I can see at least one in the room at the moment who's keeping an eye on me. They will share what worked well, maybe some of the things that didn't work well, and some of the challenges they faced, and also the impact it's had on them as people in their lives as well. We're also going to have in that session Matthew from an amazing facility in the middle of Cheshire, the Neuromuscular Centre, who's going to talk about how Bright Life changed the way they look at the way they provide an offer to their constituents. And our funding's finished for them now, it's ended, how they're seeking to sustain that, both generally as a charity and through the pandemic period as well. So hoping lots of practical examples in that. Within the toolkit itself, we're contributing a range of material from the very formal learning reports, which some people are interested in, perhaps to the more engaging film evidence, podcasts, resources of all sorts, links to our YouTube channel, links to our own legacy reports, like the one show I've just come to plug a book, the legacy report, and there'll be links to all of those kinds of things. So Bright Life's really keen to be part of it. We've signed up from the start, and really pleased to see how it's evolving. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So you're not bringing much to the table really then. That's fabulous. Thank you so much. And if I could introduce you to Jane now.
Oh, hello.
Good morning, everyone. So I am from TED in East Lindsey, and we're hosting an event this Friday at 9:30 discussing co-production in coastal and rural communities. For those of you not familiar with where East Lindsey is, it's a district in Lincolnshire on the coast. And we'd like to share how we've approached our programme by covering how we understand and represent with communities. That with word, again, is work in co-production. Defining and recognising quality in group activities and belonging. Themes and issues for working with diverse rural and coastal communities. And then thinking about sustainability, the TED's legacy, and obviously future co-production. Within our event, we're running 2 workshops to dive deeper into issues that enable relationships with ageing populations and wider community stakeholders in rural and coastal areas. The first workshop will cover understanding ageing communities, so the policy practice interface. And the second workshop will cover developing the co-productive energy of group activities. So when we started out on this journey as part of the Ageing Better programme, initially TED attempted to do co-production by formally appointing a panel of stakeholders aged 50 and over. However, using the test and learn approach, it soon became clear that working with was needed. This involved TED members and stakeholders co-producing activities and services to meet the needs of the communities, and these were from grassroots levels. TED has contributed to the toolkit in various ways, from videos of learning events we've held that share our work, toolkits covering our friendship groups, as well as toolkits from our commission partners, learning reports and bulletins, and testimonial data. There is also a presentation summarising the findings of an age-friendly communities baseline assessment that has been completed over the last year and a half. And whilst all of this is applicable to the over 50s within our projects, this could also be transferable to other groups and sectors too. So the TED team are really looking forward to sharing our programme with you and supporting all the Ageing Better partners involved in this 3-week event.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jane. And I can vouch for the fact that there are so many resources that have come forward from TED East Lindsey for the toolkit around all of those things that Jane's just talked about, and picked up on that very important point that our learning is all about ageing better. That's what our programme is about. But everything that we're sharing with you is transferable into your own areas, your own sectors, with your communities. And that's what we're hoping to achieve, to be able to, for you to take that forward and make it your own. So last but certainly not least, we have editor from Age Better in Sheffield.
Good morning, everyone, from rather cloudy Sheffield. But it's a festival, so it's going to be lovely and bright for all of us. We are bringing, Age Better in Sheffield team, bringing creativity to Toolkit, and we also bringing Toolkit to the Toolkit, created by our partners with their participants, working very closely with communities in Sheffield. I would like to invite you to a couple of sessions that we're actually running today. In one of the sessions, we will be talking about co-governance and co-commissioning. We will hear from our co-partner Alan, a lovely reflection and learning of being a part of the board overseeing our work here in Sheffield for the past 5-6 years. We will also have a chance to hear from Dave Martin, who is on this call as well. And we will have a chance to practice and have a time to think with our learning officer, Jilly. Later on in the afternoon, we will have a fantastic pleasure to welcome back our colleague Ruby Smith, who actually started the first conversation about co-production many years ago within South Yorkshire Housing Association. So she's going to take us on a wonderful journey about how we thought and how we felt about co-production looking 5 years back. So if you haven't signed up for those sessions, but with my literally 20-second speech, you feel like you would like to, please drop me a note on the chat, because I know you can't get the ticket from Eventbrite today, but we will be able to secure you with the link. So let's hope, and I'm hoping the 3 weeks of event will really motivate people to look closer at co-production and maybe make us think, like Sophie said, we're never going to crack it. So let's be adventurous, let's be brave, and let's keep learning. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, editor, and thank you for inviting people to join your sessions today as well, through the back door, so to speak, if you'd like to still get onto that session. So that's wonderful. So we will now take a 5-minute break, and then we will come back as a panel to get a little bit more interactive with you all. So welcome back, everybody. And I was just saying hello to Shada in the chat there. Shada is one of the Age of Experience members from Ageing Better in Birmingham, and she's been a huge part of this journey, and she's been involved in many interviews, and she'll be featuring in the toolkit with Vimla as well from the Age of Experience group, who I hope's in the room as well. So they're very much the face of the Age of Experience group within our toolkit, and so you'll probably get to know them through the toolkit itself. And she's actually been interviewed this morning, and that's all happening live whilst this session's happening, and so we're all going to be part of that interview and what's happening today. So that's fantastic that we're getting some sort of live coverage as well as we're going through the session. And so thanks very much for setting that up, Shada. So I'm sure that you will sort of get the vibe that this is a huge collaboration from across 14 areas, and there are also lots of external guests coming in to talk about different perspectives of co-production outside of the Ageing Better programme as well. So we wanted to get a whole range of different ideas. And we're very sort of aware that everyone will be on their own journey and at their own sort of place in terms of what you already do, what you're already involved in, whether you're sort of coming into this for the first time. So it would be nice just to get a feel across the people that are with us today, where you're at on that journey. So we've got a couple of polls to share with you, and they're anonymous. So it would be great if you could just sort of pop your answers, and just so we can see across the board where people are at. Imogen's now sharing that with you, I believe, so you can go in and kind of pick the answers that are relevant to you. So the first one is, where are you in your co-production journey right now? And the second one is around what you're hoping to get out of the festival. And then we'll share those results with you and see where we're all at. Okay. Well, there's quite a few people already fully in full flow with co-production, with lots of learning to share, which is fantastic. We haven't got anyone in the room yet that doesn't really understand what co-production is, so that's a good start. Although if you're at that place, that's absolutely fine. And then in terms of what you're hoping to get out of the festival, yeah, there's quite a few people that would like to link up with others to work in partnership around co-production, which is great. So come along to the networking after session if you can for that one. Tapping into the toolkit, fantastic. That is a huge part of what we're wanting to share with you, our national toolkit, and we've got the first session coming up next around that. Great. So yeah, there's quite a few people already doing some co-production and have their own sort of learning and experiences to share. So hopefully we'll hear about some of those in a moment. And that's great that people are looking for more confidence around using co-production methods, fantastic, and gaining inspiration. That's what we're all about, inspiring and sharing our own passion for co-production. Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, great. As Editor says, there's a good variety of answers there. Okay, so over to the audience now then. It would be great if you could either share in the chat, or if anyone wants to pop their hand up to say something around your own co-production, what you're actually doing or what you're hoping to get out of the festival. So it's just an invitation to engage with us and just tell us where you're at. Great, Shada.
First of all, I'd like to thank Vicky, and I would like to congratulate Vicky and her team and all the volunteers and all the organization, and especially Vicky and Sam. We worked nearly 1 year to get this going, and I was helping as a carer and my husband with a long-term condition. We were helping, and today is a very, very special day for co-production. If it wasn't Vicky and Sam and the team, I would have not learned about webinar or Zoom. My first experience with Vicky and Sam, and it's amazing. I don't know how to use a computer properly, only typing and those kind of things. This is a new world for me, so I'm just learning first time in my life, and I'm very excited. And when we were meeting, I had no idea what we were doing. And then in the end, because you're new, I'm a carer, your mind is all over the place. And like today, I thought it's going to be another webinar and speakers. And this is a very surprising for me. And today I've been interviewed by Aging UK. And I quickly email Vicky, right? And when I opened my computer, this is amazing. This is really good. Congratulations, Vicky. Hope we can help our aging better people, 50 plus onwards, and we can do more. We should not stop the work here. Thank you so much, Vicky. Congratulations and all the best to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shada. And it's so nice to hear that you've got so much out of being involved in our steering group. It's been amazing working with you and the rest of the team over in Birmingham, as it has with all of our partners and volunteers. So would anyone like to just, so Jenny, I can see your hand is up there. Jenny, my good colleague from South Yorkshire Housing Association.
Hey everyone, I guess I just wanted to follow up on what Shada said, and you know, this project itself has been like co-production epitomised, and I think the fact that we've brought together voices from so many people, and you know, me and Vicky had all these grand plans to travel the country and go and meet everyone in person and have all these steering groups and, you know, kind of share coffees with people, and the fact that we've been able to do that virtually, and like Shada said, for people who didn't even know how to use computers a year ago, has just been amazing. And I think we've really heard such a range of voices, and for me that's really helped in the work that we do at SYHA and really inspired me to kind of bring more people into the mix. So over the past year, you know, we've really reached out to people who we hadn't heard from before, and I think there can be a bit of a kind of usual voices in co-production, and it's been really nice to hear the other voices and the other people that we wouldn't have heard from if we always met in person. So yeah, I think it's kind of, COVID's got its real kind of pros and cons in terms of co-production, but it's been so lovely to see some new faces who wouldn't necessarily have spoken before. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at, and hearing from more and more people every day, which is fab.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And I'll really echo that. I think we wouldn't have achieved what we've achieved actually if we hadn't been working in this way, because we wouldn't have been able to interact with so many people. You know, there's no way we would have been able to get all of these people in one room together. So it's worked in our favour in lots of ways, and I think, you know, we've achieved so much more than what we anticipated. So Sophie's just saying interesting reflection on the way, yeah, absolutely, in which the pandemic has brought people together in a different way, for sure. Any other reflections maybe from the panel, or let me just check if we've got anyone else in the audience that'd like to say a little bit about their own co-production work, perhaps.
Vicky, if I could share my reflection from my very personal point of view. So I was involved in Age Better in Sheffield from the very early days, not in this role. Back then I was working for Sheffield Mind in an administrative role. And I remember very first meeting about co-production, and we were all absolutely petrified by the size of it, by all the code this, code that, and code the other. How on earth we gonna do it when we have high KPIs to reach, team to run, and this co-production thing? It took us quite some time not to be scared of it and actually realize we're doing a lot of that work not using the fancy terminology, but then we had to translate it and explain it to beneficiaries we've been working with. So actually when we were inviting them to co-design or co-evaluate the service we were providing, they were surprised, thinking, well, really? You want to hear from me? You're actually going to act on that? And I think looking now 7 years into delivery, and you think, wow, so much has changed. And I think this massive change is very well reflected in this festival. Like Tony, you said 53 sessions, but it couldn't be any less. It could be 530 sessions probably, because everyone has their own way, their own style, their own worries when it comes to co-production. And I'm sure we all still coming across people who think, oh, no one's going to listen to me, so I'm not going to bother be part of it. But then there are those who grab this opportunity with both hands and want to give their best feedback and just help us design the service we want to provide. So from my very own point of view, you have to be brave to grab on co-production and run with it. But now luckily we have plenty of resources, not only fabulous toolkit that will be launched today, but we have the network of like-minded people, and it's all about sharing that learning. So that's from my point of view. 5 years ago, oh my God, petrified by it. Today, let's crack on, let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you. What a journey it's been. And yeah, that absolutely reflects that journey, Editor. Thank you. Tony, you wanted to share something?
Yeah, Just a couple of thoughts about what people said initially, and also what Shada's just said. Every so often I hear somebody talk about Zoom fatigue, and I really react against that. I'm just full of Zoom gratitude. I'd never heard of Zoom a year ago, and I think engaging in this way has so many strengths. You know, if we're going to take a strengths-based approach to how we work with each other and how we appreciate each other, I think we should apply a similar kind of mindset to this, really. So, you know, the platform that Zoom and Teams, that, you know, other platforms are available, but the platform that they provide just suits this so well in terms of enabling contact, connection in ways that we'd never have done before. It's the most egalitarian, equalizing, democratizing, if there's such a word, experience to come on, where you're not looking up at a big stage of people and what have you, but you're just all in this together. You know, it's Tony and Vicky and Jenny and Shada, etc. So I think there's massive learning. The world has changed. I think we need to think about what the technological changes mean for co-production in our organisations. I just finished by saying I was really struck by what Chris said in his introduction about the way in which you can, if this is the right word for it, bleed the principles of co-production into other areas of your organisation, particularly strategic planning. It's infectious. Once you start to get it, then you think about the way that you work with people in a different way. You think about the way in which you plan in a different way. You think about governance in a different way. And I think as an organisation that provides services across such a range of different customers, all kinds of different ways of engagement, then the ability to learn, for example, the ability for housing to learn from health, the ability for one project to learn from another in a different part of the country. This is a superb platform for doing all of those things, and just rethinking your approach to how we are and how we lead, how we work, how we collaborate in our organisations. So I think I think there's been all kinds of really good stuff that's come up, and we're not even an hour in yet.
That's fabulous, and it's so true, isn't it? It's getting over that initial fear, and a lot of that will be raised in the workshops about, you know, this idea of giving over control and what that means, and how are we going to be able to possibly do that if we're like opening it up to everyone being on sort of an equal footing. That is one of the things that does really frighten professionals and organisations for sure. So yeah, bringing those principles into the way that we lead is so important. And John's got a reflection around co-production and the pandemic as well. John, if you'd like to share that with us.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I was interviewed for a video that's being made by the Community Fund on microfunding and the approach, and I think colleagues in Bristol were as well. And I went up to Bury and just gave our view as a programme, but one of our local volunteers, Pauline, was talking, and I remember talking with Pauline. I'm not sure it was actually got on the video, but she mentioned, because she'd been involved in co-production, she'd changed from somebody who saw a problem in her community and said, somebody needs to do something about that. So what can I do about it? Because she'd been given the confidence, the expertise, and that kind of empowerment to be able to say, well, you can get bits of things together and make a change. And it's just, I noticed that during last summer, seeing some news reports from Bury, and it's Pauline involved in a mutual aid group that was nothing to do with our programme, nothing we'd funded, but she'd changed as a person and become a community leader. And it's really important to understand that co-production is not just for the project you're producing, but the kind of change in attitudes and the change experience and the kind of memory that communities have that they can utilise in other aspects of their lives. But the important thing to recognise as well is that that's not evenly distributed, and we've seen a massive unequal impact of COVID, particularly on low-income marginalised communities where they perhaps not have the opportunities, they don't have the kind of community assets, they don't have the same kind of social infrastructure where people can kind of unite behind, and the shared spaces that have been able to build up social connections. And we need to be a bit more targeted rather than just kind of spread activity everywhere to understand what barriers exist in place and address them. And I think throughout this festival and the whole range of events, there is insight in every single event that you can take into your own work and just tweak your own way of working. It doesn't necessarily need to about lift and shift other people's models, but just look at the kind of different techniques, different approaches, and find different ways of working, because at the end of the day, it's the communities that matter. And those kind of experiences and memories and skills people generate will come from just little bits of things we can do in the way we develop and deliver our programs.
Thank you, John. That is so important and so well said there about, you know, I've seen the shifts and change through the work that I've been doing with the steering group, and Shada is a shining example of that as well. And Pauline, who I know, I've met Pauline, so yeah, it's just so inspiring to see how people develop and go on to do so many different things as a result of being part of the process. So Jane, thank you for sharing your, so I'm just reading in the chat, you've shared with all of us that you are from the relatively new AWEN Institute. Arwen. Apologies.
It means muse. That's okay. It means muse in Welsh.
Oh wow, that's fabulous.
And
Could you want to say a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's actually Welsh European funded project within the university, where we're actually developing a living lab. This all just started just last February. So I started just as everything went slightly back to front and upside down sort of thing. But we've got this living lab now, which is, it can be fitted out in all sorts of, it can sort of represent a home, a care home, or anything basically, and we can have sort of virtual reality, augmented reality stuff, all sorts of things going on. So that's sort of in the process of being developed now, but we had to be very creative in our approach then, of course, because that we couldn't actually get people in to co-produce, you know, in person, in terms of we're trying to, sorry, I'm not getting my words out very well. We're trying to, it's all about working with creative industries for our aging population. So we're actually looking at developing research ideas with older people, and then involving the creative industries with a view to maybe developing products for older people. There's all sorts of ideas really, but we have 3 research strands. One is health and well-being, and that's where I tend to work because I'm also a dementia care nurse. The other strand is a sense of place, and the other one is work. So it's all about older workers, and of course with COVID that's had some big impacts. So really the big area around, I suppose I've always co-produced. I've worked in memory clinics and care homes, and I've always listened to the voices of people who have dementia, and I've learned so much from them, so that I've helped them to talk to other people about their conditions, and it has culminated in a book, but I won't plug it here. But yeah, I mean, I've always been really passionate about listening to the voice, particularly of people who have dementia, and helping them get their voices out there. So that's my passion in the job I'm now. We're creating ideas labs and really want to connect with anyone who's interested around how we can help. I mean, I particularly more so with people with dementia, but other research ideas for our aging. Well, when we say for our aging, as if it's other people, it's not. We're all in it
We're
together.
all aging. Yeah.
But thank you. This is a great opportunity. So
fabulous. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I know we've got your colleague Liz as well in the room, who's shared her details with us. So this is what this festival is all about linking up and sharing. So thanks very much for that, Jane.
Thank you.
No problem. And you might want to link up with Time to Shine in Leeds, actually, because they're doing lots of work around sort of age friendly and dementia friendly. And
yeah, brilliant.
So yeah, that will be a great link up for you, I'm sure.
Thanks, Vicky. That's great.
No problem at all. Anyone else like to share anything before we open up for questions? I'm just trying to keep an eye on, so give me a shout if I miss anyone. Okay. Great. So any other reflections from the panel on what we've heard so far? Anything you'd like to share with us?
Can I just on that last point, co-production isn't new. It was It was a lot of people have been co-producing for a long time. It was when I started my career in the early 90s in housing and tenant participation, it was old then. But this is a really great time to actually take some of that learning, and there's a really great momentum behind it. And it's really important though, we do look at histories of the past and not assume it's just been created yesterday. There's a lot of experience out there, there's a lot of knowledge out there. It's been well researched for decades, and the academic record's full of really useful insight about what works and what doesn't work. But take the momentum, take the interest in it, especially with issues around social prescribing, to find new ways of applying. And innovation is often about the diffusion of insight, and taking some of that stuff that's been around for a while and finding new uses for it is really important.
Yeah, fabulous. Well said and well reiterated. That is so true. It's not a new thing at all, but there seems to be a big spotlight around it at the moment. Thank you, John. Chris, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, just a couple of points. I mean, first of all, I think when we think about co-production, again, it's jargon. It's person-centered, a one-to-one, an individual working with another person or a volunteer, right through to that strategic relationship and influence. I think I just wanted to give an example of how I'm wanting to promote the toolkit locally. Our voluntary and community sector organisations have come together in the last year to form a leadership group and working with the local authority to try and create a new way of working and a new relationship. And we've set out a set of principles, and we've tried to define co-production within that. And I know people are looking for good examples. So we've got lots of examples locally, but it can't mirror what's out there nationally through the programme. So it's a great benefit. And I think it's also timely, with all the positivity, to remember that when we're dealing with some of the organisations, hopefully co-production will see as a way of solving a lot of the problems and challenges they face. Equally, many of them may feel very pressurised to take shortcuts because of funding issues, because of the need to make decisions quickly, to take action, to be responsive. And there's a risk that genuine co-production gets pushed to one side. So I don't think we should be naive about those things, but I think this toolkit can be one of the resources that helps us to promote and keep the ideas alive and to share good practice.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. And that is very much our intention. It's also about helping to influence, at all different levels across. And the audiences that we've developed the toolkit for is for anybody, whether that's working at strategic, operational, grassroots, whether it's an individual wanting to work with other individuals or other groups. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Sorry, have I missed somebody else at once? Jane, did you want to come in?
I just wanted to be on the chat really, which was about listening and listening to those people. And as a result of listening to people, it empowers them. Obviously we've got some really good examples of where people have gained in confidence to then go on and do other things. And I think that's certainly something that we've done in East Lindsey is, we've learned from the fact that we need to listen to people out and about in the communities, and that not one size fits all. We have some inland, rural sort of areas that, we have great friendship groups that are really strategically set up as chief volunteers and communities. Yet there are some other friendship groups that we are involved in that almost don't want to be known as being involved or volunteering, being part of that word. So I think it's really, really key. The one thing that we've learned over the course of our programme is listening to what people want, which will then empower them.
Great, thank you, Jane. And also picking up on that point about adapting the way that you do work and engage with people. There's such a different mix across all of our areas, because some are inner city, some are rural, some are coastal. We've got the Isle of Wight, and who I put in the north, which got a bit of a laugh because they were going to be part of the northern leg of this festival, but they're not now. They're actually coming into the second week. Yeah, so we've got such a mix of different places and people that have been involved in our work. So I'm just picking up, there's quite a few sort of comments in the chat, sort of agreeing and picking up on points that people have said. So thank you for interacting in that way. So we've got about 10 minutes left. So I just want to open up to questions really. If you've got any questions that are burning that you might like to ask the panel about the work that they've been involved in or what's coming up in the festival or anything that comes to mind really, please do ask away.
I think Liz Jones is giving us a wave.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks for spotting that, Jenny.
That's all right.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody. Yeah, part of my role at Arwen as well is the sort of bid and business development aspect of things. So I'm looking for funding as well. And what I'm noticing with a lot of the funding applications, even from the really big funders like Innovate UK, for example, a lot of the bid applications now are asking for co-production on the bid as well as, so people co-produce on the bid, on the project design, as well as, you know, what used to could have sort of traditionally be done with developing a research project or a product or whatever else. And I just wondered, you know, what are people's experiences really about the application development, you know, as a co-production you know, experience really, and it would be interesting to link in from my perspective. I put my email in the chat with other people's experiences of that as well, you know, because that is something that I've seen over the last couple of years really starting to come to the fore. So, you know, I know co-production has been happening for quite a long time, but the bid part of it is something that is now, you know, and rightly should be taken into it. But I was just interested to see what other people's experiences might have been of that. Thank you.
Great question, Liz. Thank you. Anyone like to come in on that? Sophie.
Yeah, I can just echo that as a funder, we are very focused now on ensuring co-production comes through within our applications, but that we practice it ourselves. So whenever we're launching a new funding program, for example, we're now going out. We just recently did the Local Connections Fund, which is a program of micro grants delivered with the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. And to develop the form, because unfortunately we needed a form for that. We try and stay away from it as much as possible these days. But we went out to organisations that had received micro grants from us before, and more importantly, organisations that hadn't received them. And we tested different forms and different approaches with them to make sure that it was easy to complete, but also that they were able to involve people and bring in those experiences in just, you know, really practical, really granular things like the word count, how things are expressed. So we are really trying to pick up on the principles of co-production. And while we can't apply it across the board all the time, wherever we can, we are, and certainly in how we put our application processes together, but also what we're looking for within that application form. We're trying to kind of practice what we preach, if you like.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. And John, you wanted to add something?
I think it's just important to recognise the amount of energy and effort that needs to be involved in co-production and the skills that need to be applied. So if co-production and co-design is being made part of an application process, you're expecting an amount of resource to be involved in supporting that community from the start. And it creates additional barriers and it creates additional work without necessarily a guarantee of reward. So I think we need to think ethically about, is it the right thing to do at the right point? Do the organisations that work with those communities get the resources, get the core funding that allows them to have that relationship with the communities and come up with ideas as a matter of course anyway? So it's already part of their business as they go. Or does this create an additional level of bureaucracy that only a kind of well-resourced organisations can engage in? Or do we have a lot of cheap and cheerful co-production, which actually can then start to exclude some of the more kind of marginalised communities who have additional effort required to get involved in co-production techniques? So I think there's got to be a balance. I think it's really important that work's co-designed, but the skills that are needed to do good co-production need to be recognised in the resources right from the start. I think actually the Aging Better programme was perfect for us because the Community Fund gave development grants at various stages that allowed a level of co-design and co-production with communities from the start. And that's a way to work, but whether it's possible in the kind of post-austerity, post-Brexit world, is another thing altogether.
I think that's a really good point, John, because what we've had recently, there was a big grant that we wanted to apply for recently, and it fell down because they were expecting the third sector partners to be on the grant as well. You know, they were going through the application process with us, but also if they agreed to be then part of the research study, there was no mechanism for funding them. So they were expecting them to provide everything voluntarily, and there needs to be balance. You know, from I don't know how we quite might be interested to take this as another conversation somewhere else, but the lobbying side of it, to sort of say that, you know, that skill and expertise needs to be equally recognised, you know, along with all the other partners, and there needs to be some mechanism for paying people for that. You know, it's all valuable input and insight, you know, and we should be balanced partners, and so, you know, because you know, I know from academic institutions, you know, they give vouchers and things like that, but you know, in times of austerity, and particularly post-COVID, you know, that's really not going to fill any gap, is it? You know, so be again interested to see what people think of that, really, as a you know, and maybe that's something else that we need to kind of think about, you know, so that there is that, you know, more of a balance and a recognition somewhere, you know. So thank you.
Yeah, great points there. Thank you. I think Dave wanted to come in and say something as well. Hi, Dave.
Well, it's a slightly cheeky question that's for Sophie, really, which she would no doubt be expecting. What strikes me as the community fund basically takes over funding basically all of the social infrastructure of you know, the country and away from the state. And now the byword picking up on the benefits of the pandemic is that we're all in this together. I'm wondering if the marketing strategy for the big lottery is far more about buying tickets in a co-productive way for the outcomes of what the fund then does. So actually the entire population who are, instead of gambling for the future, as it were, are actually contributing and see that contribution for the benefits within the community. So it's more of a marketing co-production, as we, as individuals buying our tickets each week, are actually contributing to the benefits of society in the future.
Okay, thank you, Dave. I have to be very careful because, as you know, we're in a period of sensitivity, so I can't comment on anything that would be whatsoever construed as political in any way. Yeah. But completely agree with that principle, and that's something that we've always been aware of, and we would really like to make more of. That people, we're not giving away kind of public money, we're giving away people's money, and those people have bought lottery tickets, and those people live in communities, and that money should come back into those communities. And within those communities, wouldn't it be great if people had a voice in saying what was happening there? So yeah, I don't think that's a very political thing or a controversial thing to say. I think that seems a logical and a reasonable thing to say. And I think that's not just our opinion, but the opinion across lottery distributors. But please don't quote me on that or report me.
Thank you, Sophie. Thanks for coming and answering Dave's question there. So we have got just about 4 minutes left. So anyone else have any more questions for the panel before we close this session? Obviously it's opened up quite a lot of discussion already, a lot of interesting discussion about different things that we'll be able to carry on throughout the festival, I'm sure, at different stages. And it might be also helpful to point out that we have a session with the Co-Production Collective, who are a huge network around co-production practices and the ethics of co-production, and they have lots of different conversations around sort of should we pay people that are involved from a lived experience perspective. And so they'll be bringing in lots of these sort of different types of questions in their workshop later on in the festival as well, around the ethical side of the way that we're working with people together. I don't think we've got any.
I'm scanning through, I can't see any more hands.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks for keeping an eye. Great. So thank you so much for coming to our first launch session, for everyone for bringing their energy, enthusiasm, their questions, their thoughts, yeah, any final closing comments from any of our panel before we close? Thank you so much, all of you, for being here, for representing your areas. Thank you so much, Tony, for cutting the virtual ribbon for us. Thanks ever so much, everybody, once again. Might see some of you in the toolkit launch. Get very excited about that. That's happening very, very shortly. I'm going to jump into that session now. We've actually got the design team in there as well, who have designed this amazing toolkit for us. So yeah, we're very excited and nervous to share that with you all. So thanks, everybody. If you've got any questions at all throughout the event, just drop me a line.